Okay. Last week we spoke concerning the story of Lazarus from the 11th chapter of John, and we got to the place where Jesus told Lazarus to come forth, and I just remember exactly where we stopped because we kept going back. And we kept seeing things that we had not seen when we first started looking at it. So if there are any questions or comments at this point, you may raise the question or express the comment.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What does Lazarus mean? Does he have a specific characteristic that we're
Lazarus mean, what is that word? What does it mean? God? Is it God hears you? Let me see. One whom God helps. Elazar. It's the Hebrew of Elazar. Yeah, one whom God helps. Okay.
Okay.
Now, I think that is significant in that it helped us to move past looking at this totally from a literal standpoint. If you look at it from a literal point of view, then the question quickly rises, if it's literal, then is it coincidental that his name is one who God helps and God helped him? So that had to be in the mind of the Creator from his birth. So when you look at it from a spiritual perspective, you see that there is a message that is conveyed through the life of Lazarus. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you cannot you cannot look at it from a literal perspective. Okay. So if that being the case, then every story that Jesus told, every incident that took place, every event that transpired. Hey, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Every was a message to mankind. There is absolutely nothing in Scripture that is not a message to mankind. And we have to understand and accept, whether we believe it or not, that the message to mankind is a message to mankind and not a message to Christians. We sometimes get that mixed up in believing that Jesus is only speaking to Christians, when, to be quite frank with you, there is no indication whatsoever that Jesus' intent was to establish a form of religion called Christianity. There's no indication of that at all. Neither is there any indication that Jesus intended for baptism to be relegated only for Christianity or to Christians. There's no indication of that at any point in the Scriptures. As a matter of fact, it is quite the contrary. Because if Jesus was only speaking to Christians, then the people who were there at Antioch, who the disciples taught, would not fit the bill. Because it is said in the Acts, the 25th chapter, that it was the congregation, the people who were being taught, who called the disciples Christians. The disciples didn't call them Christians. So they believed what the disciples taught, and they called the disciples Christians. So if Christianity is about believing, then what happened to those people who believed but yet called the disciples Christians? And by doing that, what were they saying? They simply were saying that they recognized the messianic consciousness through of the disciples. They recognized the message of the Messiah that was coming through the disciples. Are you following me? Mm-hmm. So we cannot use that as a foundation for what we call Christianity today. Now, am I saying that Christianity is illegitimate? No, I'm not. But what I am saying is that we must look at the true foundation of Christianity prior to Rome interfering with Orthodox Christianity. And if we look at it from that perspective, we recognize the intent of Christianity is for everyone to recognize, to become aware that it is their obligation to travel this journey that leads us to Messianic consciousness. Does that make sense? Any questions about that?
A little bit I heard you.
A little bit you heard about Christianity.
Okay.
Okay. So what we have need to do is to rethink everything that we have been taught concerning the message that Jesus brought us and the foundational tenements of Christianity itself. You on the blinds? You got this. Now, are there any questions about that or comments? Or does that make sense? Okay. Now, as we were saying at the onset, the message of Lazarus, of the story of Lazarus, is a message to mankind. Everything that Jesus said, would you close the door, is a message to mankind. If we see it from that perspective, then we need to begin to not only accept the message, but allow the message to become who we are.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Martha means she was rebellious, and she used to know it as being associated with a mistress. And I was just wondering about the significance of that with the role that she played in all this as well.
Okay, and if you, from the role that she played, you have to look at also the name of Yeshua. Yeshua means Yahweh who delivers. So if she represents rebellion, then his connection with her is indicative of being delivered from an attitude of rebellion. And it shows that even with the attitude of rebellion, what happens? She sees the significance of the Creator, of Yeshua, in terms of his delivering, bringing her brother back to life. So it does speak to us also. You're never beyond the reach of the life that the Creator has for all of us. You're never beyond the reach of it. Regardless of what you face, regardless of what you may think about yourself or go through in this life, you're never beyond the reach of the Creator. And Jesus, or Yeshua, was in the earth for the expressed purpose of showing us how to overcome this sense of unworthiness, so that we could walk along the pathway that leads us to the place where Messianic consciousness becomes a way of life. as opposed to something that is separate for us that we look for in another life. Any other questions? Or any questions about what I just said? There is a deep need for us to get beyond ourselves and begin to look at where we go from here as opposed to where we are at this moment. When Jesus says to Lazarus, come forth, he's saying, come out of it. Come out of what? Come out of everything that holds you in bondage. Come out of everything that causes you to be blind to the pathway that you need to travel. Come out of everything that brings your selfish nature out, that causes you to be selfish. Come out of everything that causes you to be so attached to this material world until you cannot see into the realm of the spirit. And if you're unable to do that, don't worry about it. Yeshua there are people who are able to take the grave clothes off of you. And Lazarus was not able to remove the grave clothes himself. The grave clothes represents those things that we are entangled with that results in our death and our struggle to find life in the midst of that death. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. There are things in your life that you wrestle with, and it seems as though that you've gotten out of it, but it seems to pull you back in. Lazarus coming out of that sepulchre, coming out of that cave, is indicative of you making every effort to come out, but finding yourself still entangled. Am I making sense?
Yes.
Finding yourself still entangled. And this also says to us that we are indeed our brother's keeper, because the works of the hands or the journey with the feet cannot be cannot be what? You cannot do the works with the hand, or you cannot travel the journey with your feet unless you are loosened from the grave clothes. The question that arises is that when he said for Lazarus to come forth, it says that, and he that was dead came forth, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if Lazarus came forth, then how is it then that he needed to tell someone? It says that he came forth bound hand and foot with grave clothes. So if his hand and his feet were bound, how did he come forth?
The Japanese lady.
But you see my point.
Yeah.
So, and that's something I think we miss. When you say come forth. So this has to have a meaning beyond the literal translation or the literal aspects of this story. Then it says his face was bound about with a napkin, and Jesus said, "Loosen him." Now, what does this mean? It talks about loosening him from the thing that causes him not to be able to see. When the napkin about his face, these descriptions or these words that describe the condition of Lazarus coming forth are indicators that this story that Jesus was involved with, it goes far beyond the physical nature of what is written. So, are there any questions?
Back to
a little bit further back, but which feeds into what you just said. Is, we talked about Bethany, where they were going to, and Bethany means house of misery. So house of misery was only 2 miles from Jerusalem, 2 or so miles from Jerusalem. And so it feeds into what you talked about in terms of Lazarus coming out of everything that would bind him, that would spiritually bind him and prevent him from all of those things that would prevent him from spiritually seeing.
No, good. Let's look at that a moment. The idea that Bethany means misery. Think before I go any further with this. How many churches you know is named Bethany? When you think about it, it does make us wonder, why would you name something, give a name to something that you don't understand, if you don't understand what it means? Because name talks about light and movement. So, or the character, the essence of the thing. Now, what is the significance of Bethany? And when you said that, this popped in my heart. What is the significance of Bethel being in close proximity to Jerusalem?
Well, Jerusalem is a place of righteousness.
Right.
Bethel is
Place of misery.
And it's at approximately 2 miles. If you know what 2 means.
Yeah.
One is the flip side of the other, just like in us. One is us functioning out of our ego, and the other is the higher self.
And one is Shamayim, and the other is Israel, heaven and earth.
Yeah.
Jerusalem, the place of righteousness. Bethany, the place of misery. As long as we maintain our earthly nature, the essence of our earthly being, connected to the form more so than the light, then we are in misery. We are miserable.
And the earthly being will do as Lazarus did. It will go to the grave, but Jesus is using that as an object lesson in a sense, to show people that there's if that's not life, there's life. There really truly is life beyond earth or grave or what they know as death.
Yes. Actually, and he's showing that. Well, it's 2 things that when we talk about Bethany being close to Jerusalem, the misery and righteousness and heaven and earth. When we look at that, then we jump down here to where he says to Lazarus, "Come out of it, come forth." He's calling him out of his misery.
And the misery also, in a sense, could it be said to be this world that we've created, this illusion,
No
reality
question.
that we've created is our misery, and we think we're living a life.
No question. That plus, when we look at the idea in verse 44 of when he says come forth, his hand and feet are bound, but yet he comes forth. So it has to be a spiritual coming out of, a spiritual coming forth, coming out of your misery. He's calling him out of his misery, but guess what? Look at what he says. He does not bring him out of his misery. He calls him out of it, but he does not unbound his feet, his hands, neither does he remove the napkin from his face. He says to the others, loosen him. So what is he saying? It is up to us to help mankind come out of the misery, the chaos, the world of form into the world of light. Can you see that?
But
So
the implication, though, is because Lazarus came forth without the help of others, is that there's a first step somewhere.
And
that we
how
have
do you
to take.
And how do you do that with your feet tied up? How do you come forth? So it had to be a miraculous thing in itself. And it had to also have been a conscious effort on Lazarus' part.
I was gonna say,
You gotta, I cannot
desire.
force, desire.
Mhm.
I can't force you to travel the journey. I can't force you to desire light. But if I offer it to you and you make an effort, then there are others who are around you who can help you be loosened from what you're entangled with. Now, there's something else significant here. There is no indication here that the people to whom Jesus is speaking are any further along the lines of understanding what Jesus is about than was Lazarus. So and that says to me that you will find deliverance in places that you never thought you would. And you will find deliverance coming from people that you never thought had a clue about what deliverance is. You will also find deliverance presented to you by people who don't realize what they're doing. So this in itself says, don't discount anything or anyone. The events in your life, the people who cross your pathway are there for a purpose. And the purpose for which they're there is what? Deliverance. So Yeshua is helping them to understand that I'm not going to do it all for you. I can't do it all for you. All I can do for you is point the way. I can show you the way. But you must have an expressed desire to travel as I travel. Or you must have an expressed desire to be connected to the Creator as I am connected to the Creator. He says that I am the vine and you are the branch. A vine means to flow from, and branch talks about to receive. So what he's saying in that regard is that the I am is the source of all that is, and you are the recipient. Now that is not predicated on whether or not you believe it. It's not based upon whether you accept it. That's just what is. Now, it becomes real to you, or it becomes true to you, or it becomes the right direction for you when you begin to desire, when you express the desire to understand it, the desire to receive it. That's when it becomes real to you. I saw a hand. Okay.
So what you're saying is, there's some scriptures that says, "Come as you are." So whether it's bound in whatever, you just have to have the desire.
Yes.
That's all.
That's all. That's all. See, the reason it takes desire as opposed to us planning it is because everything that we have planned has been for our benefit in the forms that we are, as opposed to Shamayim, heaven, enlightenment. Every time that we take it upon ourselves through our intellectual capacity, what we do is form a religion around a particular event. For example, the Azusa Street Revival, another form of Christianity came out of that called the charismatic movement. So rather than us making that decision and sitting down and writing up all of these doctrines about what we believe and don't believe, it is better for us to just take the words of Yeshua and move forward and allow our direction to be guided by what the word says, as opposed to guided by what some hierarchy in a religious setting says. Does that make sense?
Well, is that, well, what's going through my mind is that why there can be no coercion? Because if the person doesn't have the desire, then there's no change, right? Or there's no connection. And I'm asking a question.
Okay.
Because people can be coerced into doing things and believing stuff
Right.
when they really actually have no desire. I mean, no real,
Desire.
true desire. Is that true?
Yeah, people can be coerced.
We were,
And that's where I'm headed.
yeah.
We grew up we were taught as we grew up to develop a desire for Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how you get to heaven. And nobody wants to go to hell. That's what we were taught. The desire, the reason the scripture says that those who lead others astray will be beat with many stripes, that it is incumbent upon the leader / teacher to make sure that what's being taught is correct, is in line with the scriptures. If the desire is to be connected to the leadership as opposed to realizing your connection to the Creator, then you have the wrong desire. If the desire is to come to a realization of your relationship with the Creator, then your desire is enough to get you beyond this struggle of light and darkness, if you have that desire. And I got you. And I believe that the desire of those who took us to church every Sunday, their desire for their relationship with the Creator is what caused us to have an increased desire that moved us to a place of searching. You see? I believe that it grew exponentially. And it's funny that you talk about that, because last night when I was at the basketball game, when the boys' game started, I saw the assistant coach moving the chairs where the team sits. He was lining them up on the carpet, and there was a black border around the red carpet. And he was lining them up on the black border. And he got to one chair, and it was like the 4 chairs left. But the first of the 4, he was off by less than a quarter of an inch. But when he got to the 4th chair, it was in line with it, but he was off by 3 to 4 inches. So if you take that and look at the quarter of an inch or so that he was off, and change that to him from being off to desire. The desire of those who came before us for truth, for light, for understanding is there. But as generations grew, the desire grew exponentially. And that's where it has propelled us to a place of desire, which also pushes the next generation to go even further than where we are.
Mm-hmm. So you don't have to fix anything. You just have to have a desire. And then it's up to others to help you see what it is you need to fix.
Right. And you can't do that by blaming others for everything you deal with.
Right.
You can't do that. It's not up to me to take the speck out of my brother's eye.
Right.
When I have a log in my own. That's not up to me to do that. It's up to me to recognize that there is a speck there and to help them to move beyond that blemish or that speck or whatever. That's what it is. But for me to rail against it and continually, it does no good for me to talk about what my friends do that's wrong,
We're supposed to,
as opposed to talking about what I do.
okay, so we're supposed to loose, not bind them more
Right,
and,
there you go.
and stuff.
Yeah, and I haven't forgotten you. Binding them more, how do we do that? If I were to sit here and talk about how irresponsible some of my friends may be, and quite frankly, I don't think they are, but if I were to sit here and say that they're irresponsible, they're always saying this, they're always doing that, then I am binding them. I'm not loosening them. I'm binding, even though they are not here. My words are putting grave clothes on them. But if I were to sit here and talk about the significant movements that has been made towards light and desire for light, then I am loosening them. Example, yesterday, my friend Lola from Atlanta, the guy in the wheelchair, he called me with a question concerning Abraham and the three angels that had the discussion with him. He called me concerning that, and it probably took me about an hour to go through that with him and help him to see and understand the answer to the question that he was raising. Now, if I were to talk about shoes, he's supposed to be a preacher, he don't know that. That's binding him. But by virtue of me saying, this is what I do. Because he said to me, I don't want you to think that I'm trying to trap you. And I tell him, no, I know you better than that. This is what I do. If I deal with it from that perspective, I'm loosening him. So, it's in the tone.
Only thing I had to say about the desire thing is, with the desire, even though I guess it's kind of a difference once you are actually trying to pursue something outside of yourself. So we were talking about when we were in the church, and you need to basically go to church, but it's for this external reward, or so God will be happy with you and things like that. It was always for some type of thing outside of yourself. So it's a bit different when it comes to coercion if you're actually looking within and seeing your connection to the whole, because that's what you want to get to know, a better understanding, etc. So it's not necessarily for some award that will be showered upon you, so to speak.
Okay, Barbara.
No, you can respond to him because I have another example of what I think is coercion.
Okay, and if you know you're being coerced, you're not being coerced. Coercion is only effective when you are seeking something and you're presented with something that looks like what you're looking for, or you're convinced that this is it.
I was listening to a portion of CNN yesterday, and there was this guy who was gay, and he's making a documentary about what's happening in some portions of Uganda, where the missionaries really just, went there after Idi Amin was dethroned, if you will. And what he's saying is that the evangelists are so intolerable that they whipped people up in terms of their attitudes, that they are about to pass laws which will put to death a gay or a lesbian person if they're caught the second time. That's coercion, because people don't know what they're doing. Well, they think they know, but they really don't know what they're doing. And when you they're teaching people wrongly, just like Catholicism.
Note now, these are American evangelists.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who are coming from, whether it be Southern Baptists, primarily, who are teaching them this. Not only are they doing this, but these are also this is also the same group who's manipulating certain members of Congress, that C Street crowd. That's where this is coming from. And this is the worst kind of coercion.
I mean, in the name of religion.
Yes.
Quote unquote.
Yeah. And more pointedly, in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
That they are doing this. And this is not something that's far-fetched.
Or new.
This not right. This is real, and it's actually happening. I mean, it's totally happening. So what happens is that coercion, the concept or the idea of coercion moves you further and further away from the truth. You may get glimpses of it, but it moves you further and further away from it. And I'll give you another example of that. Most people who are Christian interchange Christ and Jesus. They interchange the names as if Christ is a proper name. And if we live in the earth realm totally in terms of our processing, then we even see Jesus' name as a proper name rather than as a story to be told. And I think that's why it is so important for us to actually revisit Scripture, continuously question stuff, so that we can get some idea, some direction, some clue as to what all this means. When you look at it, says that he's bound with the knife, and Jesus said to them, "Loose him and let him go." This idea of loosening him, it said, "Loosen him and let him go. Don't carry him. Let him go the way he chooses." Can you see that?
Yeah, I see the sense that it's not trying to force him to do anything,
That's
like
it.
bend his will at all. Is as if it's wisdom behind it, knowing that the only way that he's going to get there is not that he wants to get there himself, not that he tries to go, but also wants to get there, which
Yeah.
is totally different. So it's like his desire has to be pure.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you may try to do something, but you don't do it out of pure intentions, so to speak.
And that's the whole idea of purging. I'm not pruning. When it talks about the vine being pruned, right now is the time to start pruning muscadine vine. And all the new growth that you got fruit from, you have to cut it off. You have to cut it back in order to get muscadine next year. And it doesn't look good when you do it, and it doesn't appear that it's the proper thing to do. But if you don't cut the vine off that produced last year, you won't get a fruit next year. Can you see what I'm talking about? So, in order for you to continuously be fruitful, you have to continuously be pruned, be purified. The dead stuff has to be cut off. The dead weight has to be separated from you. Yeah. Where?
How do you know if you're cutting the right one?
You don't you don't do the pruning. It says that the Father does the pruning. If you're being pruned, it is our responsibility to help you get through it. The idea, the root for the word vine is epitah. Patah comes from the Egyptian meaning to pass through or to get beyond something. So the vine is representative of something flowing through, right? So in order for the branches on the vine to do what it's supposed to do, then the one who is the husbandman, which is the Father or the Creator, is the one who does the pruning. Any more questions? That's what's happening, when Barbara was talking about the laws that are being passed in Uganda, pertaining to, death for homosexuals, that is man pruning. That's what you get when men began to prune.
And I don't know that they passed them yet, but this been whipping people up into a frenzy. So they're about to decide on this.
I'm not sure that they have. They've been doing this for the last 3 years.
Doing it for a while.
Yeah, it's been a minute since they've been doing it. And the only
Just
reason they didn't do it, they didn't pass the laws 3 years ago, is because the UN intervened. But they are very much close to doing it. But even though they are not, the laws are not on the books, they're still doing it. They're carrying out the sentences.
It's interesting to me that they know they can't get away with something like that here, but they go over there and try to get away with it. I mean, I just don't understand the mindset. I mean, you would call yourself, I mean, in this case, you would want to say, what would Jesus do?
Yeah.
Tell them to go on about their business. But they're not looking at it like that.
You won't pay attention.
Well, you know, the preacher from Gastonia who just got convicted for having sex with minors in Haiti, he got 66 years.
You deserve it.
And you know, how long has that been going on? How long has he been doing that? How many other countries has he been in? You know, so it's something that he was not apparently doing here. It's dealing with those who are vulnerable. And the ones who are most vulnerable are the ones who are manipulated the most.
Yeah.
And this is the other part of what Barbara was talking about. The people who are pushing this are also on the payroll of these evangelists. So they are actually being paid to do what they're doing.
Yeah, and they're getting funding for their political
agendas.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the expression, what's bound in heaven, what's bound on earth will be bound in heaven? If they're creating fervor in terms of homosexuality, are we obligated to find that out?
Say that again.
The expression, what's bound on earth will be bound in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
If they're binding people, coercing them, and just binding them, what is that doing in the spirit?
Okay.
And are we obligated to unbind that?
First of all, what they are bound in earth is not bound in heaven. That scripture says specifically to Peter, whatever is bound on earth is also bound in heaven. Whatever is loosed on earth is also loosed in heaven. It's talking about someone who is a disciple seeking truth, seeking to be pure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what it's talking about.
All right.
And that which is loosened or bound has to be in line with what the scriptures are presenting.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Any other questions about that? Okay. When Lazarus was loosened, he said, let him go. So he went the way he chose to go. It was his choice, the direction he wanted to take. That in itself tells us we do not have the right to coerce anyone to do anything. That if I felt that there was coercion taking place on my part in order to keep you coming here, I wouldn't even come back. You must do it by free will. If you do it by coercion, that means I have usurped your free will, or you have submitted your free will to me. Then he says, it says some of them went their way. Some of them took their own path. Way talks about a path of light, and that pathway of light is either the one that you choose based upon your relationship with the Creator, or is that path of light that you have been told that is light and you travel it. Because when we were in the settings that we came out of, we were convinced beyond anything else that we were traveling the enlightened pathway. Were we not? We were convinced of that. So when it says, and they went their way, it does not necessarily mean that they traveled the path of light in terms of the pathway that Jesus was talking about when he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Okay? Now, these pathways, these words, the understandings that we are gathering, are beginning to see, help us to note that just because someone is traveling a pathway, it does not necessarily mean that they're traveling the path that leads to righteousness. It says they went to the Pharisees. They made their way to the Pharisees. Why do you think that they went to the Pharisees? Why do you think they went there? Do you know who the Pharisees were?
Yeah, well,
They were not the teachers.
They were the rulers of the church,
They,
or the law, whatever.
the Sadducees ruled the church. The priests ruled the church. The Pharisees were interpreters of the law.
Yeah.
They interpreted the law. And however they interpreted the law, the priests had to carry it out. Now keep in mind, the Pharisees were in line with Rome when Rome overtook Palestine.
And the Romans were keeping them involved.
Yeah. So it was you scratch my back, I scratch yours, that type thing. So
Would you say they were almost like our Supreme Court now?
no, I would say that they're like our deacons.
Okay.
They interpreted the law. So they went to the Pharisees because they felt that the Pharisees could tell them whether or not they should believe what Jesus was doing, or believe in him because of what he was doing. Because the last thing it says that when they saw the things that Jesus did, they believed on him. They believed him. And what they did, they went to the Pharisees to see if this right. No different than some of the stuff that we talk about, especially in my class on Monday night. They go to the preacher, the pastor, or to the deacon and say to them what they have learned in the class, and to see if it's right. You see what I'm talking about? And the funny thing is that they never get the right answers, and they realize they're not getting them, which further confuses me about why they even do it. But that's okay.
It's that thing you mentioned earlier about being coerced and knowing.
And you know, sometimes I think it's one of those things where, just in case. Just in case I'm not there for them, they're not excommunicated from the group that they are comfortable with. They got to belong to something.
So you're saying you're insurance to them?
Yeah, I'm insurance. Yeah, they just don't pay the policy.
No, free policy.
Yeah, the thing about Pharisees is this is the sect that did outward kinds of things like the ceremonial washings and all of that stuff. It was about outward appearance for them, praying in the street rather than their closet kind of thing. And so it's almost like the people, like he said, going back to them, to take this back from, they're giving us, in a sense, my word, a freedom that they've seen of what truly spiritual deliverance is, and putting it back in the hands of as you say, the earthly men who then interpret it for them. Yes. And so what it's almost like we come upon an aha moment in our lives, and we truly know it's not of me as a individual person, but it's connected to something beyond myself. But then instead of just accepting that, I have to go back and find a materialistic explanation for that thing, or a scientific explanation for that thing, or an intellectual explanation for that thing. It's almost like it discounts the experience that I had by accepting. They discounted that experience by accepting what the Pharisees said about it.
Right.
Makes
And
sense.
it's like when I was telling a friend that the three who appeared to Abraham were angels. He said, but it doesn't say that. It says 3 men appeared to him. And then further down it says, and the 2 angels entered the city. And I said to him, it says they appeared to him. Understand that they appeared, they didn't come in terms of from another place. Understand that angel means message. He said, no, it means messenger. So no, it's the message that manifests in bodily form. And after the message is delivered, then it dissipates, for lack of a better word. So the struggle was trying to get him to see from men to angels how that happens. And the thing that helped him see it was when the angel appeared before the donkey and spoke and then was gone. And that's when he began to see with a clarity what I was trying to get him to see. So in a sense, if he had not continued to question me and had gone to the Pharisee or to someone else to get a physical explanation of it, then I'm sure that it would have been totally different than what he received in terms of the understanding. I want to look at something else too. Oh, okay, go ahead.
Before what Robert was saying, reading about him as well. This outward form of piety that they actually lifted up and kind of like went against Jesus as far as against Jesus and experience and things like that. They also did it as a reason to legitimize themselves. So as if that gave them notoriety, etc. So because we're looking at it from a sense of almost kind of like a preacher, and with the preacher being the most knowledgeable or supposedly the most knowledgeable about the Bible, etc., and the people reverencing him because of his knowledge and his abilities with the Bible, etc., they sought to gain that for themselves.
Yeah.
The Pharisees.
And that is the reason they held counsel with the priest, so they could be on the same page. It's, and the idea of them coming together and having a joint session. The idea of that was to not only discuss what Jesus had done, but also to come to some type of conclusion as to how they were going to handle him.
Is that the same thing like when deacons and preachers, the pastor meet before church meeting?
In a sense, yes. But it's more like when experience. There was a preacher who met with deacon from the church that I pastored and questioned what I was teaching and sowed the seed that they needed. It would be better off getting rid of me. It didn't work, but that's what it's more like.
Mm.
And from another standpoint, is if someone is doing something just to be seen and to be praised, for people to exalt them for their works or to look up to them. And that's the only reason for doing it. Like, it can be a good deed or something like that, but they are putting themselves in superiority over the other people. It's the same thing of the other people not knowing that they too are just like these Pharisees as far as their connection to God, etc. So now all of a sudden they are special.
I see the pastor trying to get his yes man.
I give you another example. I was sitting in a setting at a press conference. I had to arrange a press conference for the association. So I arranged a press conference for the association, did the intro, and here's the moderator. He speaks. A question comes that's going to, you know how, where the question was, if he answered it the way he should answer it, it's going to be damaging. If he doesn't, it's going to be damaging. So I step up to between him and the mic and say, that is not what we're here to discuss, and this, and talked about the question I would answer, and sat down. And one of the preachers said, "You looking at the next moderator." And that's where my trouble started. That's no different than what happens here. You're looking at someone who's going to lead the people, as opposed to us doing this. So we have to do something to stop him. So there's example after example that you can find with this. And there are permanent settings depending on the type of hierarchy you have, in the religious structure. So they acknowledge, this is the thing that gets me, they acknowledge the reality of who he is by virtue of them saying, if we leave him alone, I'm sorry, not that, let's back up. What did we do with him? They say this, he's doing miracles. He's doing stuff that we can't do. We got to stop this. It's no different than people today were drawn to the charismatic movement because of healings. It was not about truth or Jesus or enlightenment. It wasn't that at all. It was about healings. It was about the power of the presence being expressed through individuals. That's what it was about. And I can say that because I was a part of that, an intricate part of that. And I know what drew the people was I was able to look in their face and tell them their life story. And that's what drew them. And this is the paradox. That's what drew them, but then they didn't want me to tell them. They were afraid I'd go see too much, I guess. I don't know. But but all of a sudden, it ends, not because it cannot be done, it ends because it should not be done. So now you have to believe, you have to come based upon your desire to walk in this, to walk this path of enlightenment, as opposed to the entertainment, because that had to be what you thought it was subconsciously, just to come to see it. There are other miracles. The lady at Haskell who could not see, but was able to read a sign like 100 feet from her after we took her glasses off and touched her eyes. Those are the kinds of things that drew people. But now you don't see that anymore. Because now you have to be drawn by the light. Not by the light that you see, but also you have to have a desire to connect your light with that light. Putting sparks together in one vessel to make a flame. Barbara, what is it?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the key to everything in this 48th verse. If we let him, if we don't do anything to him, then all will begin to believe him, and the Romans will come and take away our place in our nation. We will not have our positions of power and authority anymore. What is that saying? That is saying that whether it was conscious or subconscious, the chief priests and the Pharisees saw the Romans as the creator. That was their God. Because that's who they were serving, and that's who they were afraid of. And they were serving them not because they loved them, but they were serving them because of what they was getting as a result of serving them. That's the key to all of this. Now,
But the other thing too said they tied place and nation together. Now, the one true God is the one who made them a nation.
yeah,
So it's like they are selling their souls in a sense. Not only are they thinking about what they are down here, and my position of authority down here, but then they hitch nation onto it, and I don't know if that's to instigate or whatever. Because a lot of times we do that when we want to stir stuff up. We will tell one part of it and then we'll tie something else to it that other people are invested in to give it support. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah.
And the Romans could not take away the nation that they were unless they allowed the
Yeah.
nation, allowed them to do it.
And what they were seeing was that the nation belongs to us.
Yeah, so
It belongs to us. It belongs to the priests and the interpreters of the law. That's what it belonged to,
we are the ones who made the nation, not Elohim.
not Elohim.
Yeah.
And if the Romans remove our position, we will no longer be the rulers of this nation.
Hmm.
That's what they were saying.
But what stopped Rome from, because Rome was really a powerful nation, right?
Yeah.
So what, do you think it was divine intervention that God stopped them from, or dispersed them from having that power or something? 'Cause-
Well, you have to go back to the history of the Maccabees. Fought the Greeks, and they asked the Romans to come in to help them defeat the Greeks, and the Romans did defeat the Greeks, and then they took over, and the empire of Rome began to fall because people in many different parts of the world began to rise up against them.
Okay.
So it weakened their grip on the nations that they controlled. It's almost like Great Britain was. The sun never went down on the British flag. At some point, imperialism has to end because it gets to the point where it's too costly, either in dollars or money. Okay.
Okay.
What I want to do now is see, can we put it together? This whole thing about Lazarus and his death is Yeshua talking about there's nothing that besets you that can possibly put you in a state of death from which you cannot be revived. It does not matter how long you have been dead, not in classical sense, but how long you've been dead. It doesn't matter. You can be revived. But during the time of your being revived, your desiring to come out of the thing that entangles you, that keeps you in that place of death, you won't be able to do it alone. Yes, Jesus is not going to do it. The people around you have to help you do it. Why would he do that? The reason he did that is because he knew that this was a message for men who were not in the earth yet. And if he had done it, then we today would be dependent on him to do it now, as some of us are. But rather than letting the people around us handle that, or help us rather. And what he did in having the people be involved in the removal of the grave clothes, he helped them to see that we are indeed our brother's keeper. Then, regardless of what you show people, regardless of what they see, how much light they see in you, it matters not how much you are able to do to help someone and they know who you are. They still are going to reconnect to the darkness that they supposedly had come out of, even though they say they believe on you, because they see the light in you. And when they do that, they will run and tell that you are doing something out of the ordinary. And those who are in authority get uncomfortable because they see you as a threat to their power and position. Keep in mind that Jesus had no respect, no regard for the Roman government. He spoke truth to the people, period. He did not care what happened to him. He spoke truth to power. And he, by doing so, he put himself in jeopardy with the priests and the Pharisees. And he also put himself in jeopardy with the Romans by virtue of the priests and the Pharisees contemplating what they needed to do with him. And if you follow the story through, not just here in this 11th chapter, but I'm talking about the life of Yeshua, the life of Jesus. If you follow it through, you will see that it was the priests who convinced the Romans to crucify him. Had it been, the Romans didn't care. They didn't care one way or the other, because they felt that they were so powerful, nothing could defeat them anyway. So it didn't matter to them. And neither did they care who was in charge. It didn't matter to them whether it was Caiaphas or some other high priest. They didn't care. They knew that if the priest didn't serve them well, they would go get rid of them and get somebody else anyway. And Jesus did not respect that. That's what got him in trouble. He did not respect the interpretation of the law as it was interpreted by the Pharisees. He did not respect the arrogance of the priests as they walked through the marketplace with bells on the hem of their garments so people would part their way for them. He didn't respect that. He did not respect any of the laws or any of the interpretations that kept people in bondage. And he exemplified that when he said, when he made the statement that the Sabbath was made for man. Man was not made for the Sabbath. He exemplified the concept of man being responsible for himself, and that man had to travel a journey without allowing people to coerce him, manipulate, or to convince him to submit his free will to them. That's what this is all about. That's what we are now. Making decisions about not only where we are, but also how we're going to move along the path, this journey or this pathway. So, are there any questions?
So Caiaphas was the priest that was chosen by the Romans?
Yes.
So
Well, the priests were chosen. The priests were chosen by the Romans, and the priest chose the high priest. So, one step removed from that. But yes,
what does his name mean?
Comely, something like that.
yeah, calm.
As calmly.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Nondescript.
Yeah, just
there's
plain.
nothing really that set him apart.
What, bland?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Although he's the one who predicted Jesus' death, in
Yeah.
a sense. I don't know if he
Well,
would, but
I think he initiated it because he said it's expedient for one man to die rather than the whole nation period. So he says, if we don't stop this, the Romans going to do something. The Romans going to deal with us. So it's better for him to die than for us to lose our positions. So in actuality, it was more than a prediction. It was a decision. So, okay. He didn't know how the depth of the truth that he was speaking. Because the death for the nation meant more than he thought it meant. He thought it meant the nation because delivering them from the hands of the Romans in this physical, this earthly world. But it was more the spiritual that this was alluding to. That's why we do the same thing. We say spiritual things all the time. You're in the dark about this, or enlighten me on what you're doing. We say spiritual things all the time, and that's what they were doing without knowing that they were making fulfilling rather a prophecy. So, the last thing I want to say is this. Another reason we cannot take this literally is because Isaiah said or wrote, and his name shall be called Emmanuel, which means God with you. Right? His name was not called Emmanuel. It was called Yeshua. If we take this literally, then Isaiah didn't know what he was talking about. But if we look at it spiritually, he knew what he was talking about. The light of Yahweh will be with them, Emmanuel. The light of God will be with them. And the light of God was with them through Yeshua because of who he is and what he did. Can you see that? So the enlightenment was there. So you cannot take it literal, because if you take one portion literally, then all of it is literal. And it's clearly spoken that the word is spiritual. It is breath. It is life. It is light. So we're at a juncture right now where we are juncture, crossroads, where a decision has to be made, and we recognize the way, which is the path of enlightenment. We see that. We don't see it in totality. We never shall, but we see it. We see it's there. So when you see that pathway is there, you're at a crossroads. You're at a junction. And that's where Lazarus was when he came out. Let him go. He's at a crossroads. And that crossroads is, I would take it the right direction or going in the direction that we choose to go in that leads us right back to the bondage that we were in before. And a question was asked about us fixing something. Someone asked, said something about fixing it. The reason we don't have to fix anything is because if we travel in the right direction, the word for life, and I am the way, the truth, and life, it talks about the cosmic energy or the cosmic ability or the divine power that is infused to us so that we would have the stamina to travel this path of enlightenment and to help others to travel that path. That's where we are. So, and that's how that the way, the truth, of the life is not just tied to Jesus. It's also incumbent upon us to recognize that that's who we are. And death is far more than the disengagement of the breath from the body. Far more than that. Any questions? Okay, this is the smallest amount of questions I've had in a long time. I guess they sad because Sheldon leaving. Or they glad.
Well, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Did you talk about the gun control thing at all?
No, I didn't, but I will. What's your question?
Well, I'm wondering how we should respond to that. And I sort of know that we don't really need to do anything, but still I'm wondering.
Just in case.
Yeah.
Just
You have already answered your question. Desire. What is your desire? And I suppose you're asking, what should our desire be? Whatever the Creator desires. Why? Because this country, this nation, is at a crossroad. And it has to choose the direction that it's going to take.
Well, I guess I'm asking because what we've been talking about coercion,
Yeah.
and the NRA has been coercing people big time.
Yeah.
So we should have the desire that people just
See?
see the truth of it, or
Yes, of course. Now keep in mind.
Not the truth of that, the truth
No,
of
the truth
the
of-
Creator. And
Yes.
everything else
That's what I
falls in
mean.
line.
They
I mean the truth, not
Yeah.
the truth of
Yes.
that thing.
Right. They
That's the
need
truth.
now. Keep in mind that the coercion that has been perpetrated by the NRA has been exposed. But it is convenient to hide behind the NRA and guns when you don't want to appear racist.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. If the end could come to it instantly if the government were dissolved, because the red states couldn't survive. How long could South Carolina survive without federal funds? You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So it's not that
go
they
back
have not
to
seen that they're being manipulated. Many of them have seen that they're being manipulated. The guy who said that he would go shoot some folk, you know, if they tried to take his guns, and he would fire the first shot, whatever. This is not about guns. this is about racism. The whole idea of the NRA at the top was to manipulate the bottom tier to keep them in line so that the gun manufacturers could have their way in doing whatever they chose to do. That's what this has always been about ever since the NRA became as political as it is, because in the beginning it was not that. It wasn't that. In the beginning, it served a better cause, a purpose than it does now. Go ahead.
Can you connect the dots to racism?
Talking about from the NRA. Look at the statements that are being made. When you look at the idea of the anger concerning the executive orders that were issued, when every president issued executive orders, both Bushes did it and Clinton, in relationship to not only guns but many other things. When you look at the proposals that were made, or proposals that were already either on the books, that he talked about enforcement, for example, background checks are already on the books. It's just an expansion of that to gun shows so that you can trace a weapon. So all these things that they're arguing about are already there. So if they're already there, and if the assault weapon ban was okay for Clinton and okay for Bush to continue till he got tired of continue the second term, if that was okay for him, how come it's not okay for Obama? The other thing is that there is a documentary on PBS that shows the foundation that was laid that led to all of this. The night of the inauguration, while Obama was going to different balls and stuff, the Republican Party was meeting at a restaurant in D.C., making a decision that they were not going to agree to anything he said. There was a great discussion on how the country would move, but the bottom line was, it does not matter what he proposes, we are going to oppose it. That's what started. And that's what led us to this place where we are right now. And if you look at it, from the Republican Party is being controlled by people who are primarily Southerners. And don't have any doubt about it. Southerners do believe that the South will rise again. That's the whole purpose of their guns. They really believe that. So when you say connect the dots, it's evident it's been masqueraded as something else. Take our country back. Go ahead, Bob.
That's what we have to do, Arch. If Southerners have no doubt that the South will rise again, and it's through their guns that they will do it, we are the spiritual answer to that. That truth will rise in spite of all this stuff. Just like the Lazarus story just now, it goes beyond material. Truth will rise, and we just desire.
Already in the South.
Yes.
So that's where we are essentially, and it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out. This is a huge part of the shift in energy on the 21st. A huge part of it. We talked about how it's going to be evident but not visible. Huge part of it. That's the thing that we have to recognize. It is no coincidence that we are in the South or in South Carolina, and we are seeing what we see and determining what we are determining. There's no coincidence. There are no coincidences. We are supposed to do what we are doing. We were born for this period. And keep in mind, the reason we're seeing the extremes it's because that answers that question too about Uganda.
Mhm.
The reason we're seeing the extreme is because you remember when Nick talked about the extreme of confusion, African, the extreme of man's light being Caucasian, and nothing is going to change until they come together and reconcile that. Obama is both. He came from a Caucasian womb and a African seed. The extreme is the light, thinking it's right because it says right, going to the extreme, those who are confused, and convincing them that they should kill people based on sexual preference. Because see, if you should stone homosexuals, then you have to stone adulterers, you have to stone the people who disobey their parents. It's just a whole list of people who will be stoned. And you have to, guess what? If everything that Leviticus talk about in the 20th chapter, if everything listed in that, if we will go be stoned, we wouldn't be sitting here. I know I wouldn't. Because we are victims or guilty or whatever. Guilty of something. So
So such a time as this that you talked about, it's about our seeing the extremes and desiring the balance, the oneness of the physical, the masculine and spiritual energies. The seed being the masculine, the moon being representative of the feminine energy. And
yes,
Obama is simply a
manifestation.
symbol of that.
Yes.
So then that tells me then that not only is this NRA issue something to watch, but his entire second term is going to be something to watch. And one reason is because he has nothing to lose anymore.
Right.
And so we can desire that minimally that issues surface that need to surface, that expose who we are as a nation, not only physically but spiritually.
And that's exactly what's happening. You can see a glimpse of that in the capitulation with the physical thing, cliff thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
and the debt ceiling thing. You can see that beginning to take shape. And see, people who don't, Jesus said, "Be mindful of the signs of the times." People who don't see that will miss it. That these are the beginnings of something much greater. And I'm not talking about in a physical way, but they're going to manifest physically. But these are spiritual truths that are beginning to manifest.
Then I am grateful that we've talked about all this stuff, because one of the sessions that we had, we said that we don't want to miss it,
Right.
whatever the miss it was.
Yeah.
And the miss it has to do with being mindful of the reason we're here at this season,
Yeah.
and that is to help to maintain that balance and that oneness between in whatever arena, whether it's political, it doesn't matter, as long as we can trust spiritually.
Look at South Carolina, please. One African American senator and one Caucasian senator, both extremes, coming out in an extreme state. I don't even lie to you. When they were talking about seceding, I was hoping they would be successful in seceding. That would have lasted about 30 minutes. I would have been happy to see how they're gonna handle that. Because now you're another nation, so you don't get Social Security checks. I mean, you can go down
The black folk will have to leave.
there's a list of things that you can check off that would not be.
All the Hispanics would have to leave the state.
Medicaid,
So it was.
transportation.
It was, I'm like, okay, do you know what you're doing? That's
Okay.
exactly why Paris said, hey, I'm kidding. He waited and he saw.
And look at the lady in Arizona who now wants Obamacare.
Oh yeah. It would be immoral for me not to do it. Yeah.
She
Rural.
justified it a good way. It would be immoral for me not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, these are the things that we set up all night not to miss, to influence, to bring balance to.
Well, I appreciated too that Christie spoke out against that NRA ad. So they had one of their own speaking out for them.
And it had to be. It had to be. Because it has to be reconciled.
My question is, Bill, what's the significance of the fluctuating cases of the female teachers who were sexually involved in their students?
Is feminine energy being confused? Seeking pleasure in the wrong way.
I didn't hear the question.
Female being involved with their students, teachers.
Oh.
I mean, because every week we're not talking a case, we're talking several cases.
And see,
especially the ones that are getting
keep
here
in mind,
Columbia.
keep in mind, this did not start yesterday. That's been happening ever since I was in high school. It's just percolating to the top. Everything that can be shaken will be shaken. Everything that can be exposed will be exposed. Are you with me? So this just being exposed so we will know what to bring balance to. The things that have been hidden are now being exposed. And when we were talking about if Obama had not been elected, then we would not see the level of racism on the surface that we see now. This lady, this lady and this guy at two different times said to me, when they were talking about them challenging Obama on everything, this is not racism. And when a statement was made about him being lazy, that's not racism. And my response to that was, how are you gonna tell me what racism is? When the last time you experienced it? You gonna tell me how I feel? So it's something that we have to see, but we don't have to get so involved in it till we become it. We have to see it and know that we are supposed to bring balance. That's what we're supposed to do. Anger does not do anything unless it's righteous anger. Anger does, and righteous anger deals with your anger because people are suffering, not because of what's going on in terms of what's affected you personally. Because quite frankly, none of this affects us personally, unless you allow it to. We're totally beyond that. Not oblivious of it, but beyond that. Okay. Any questions? That it, Miss Audrey? Okay. All right. Audrey?
The light of the truth that we are, and the truth of the light that we are, has us to know that through our genuine desire, we have been delivered from the misery of bitterness and rebellion. So that we can see who we are. Amen.
Man, that statement, being delivered from misery and rebellion, that's a whole lesson in itself.